Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. So, we have quite an interesting week ahead for us. The energetics of shifts and changes and resolution, conflict, integration. They all kind of swirl around this central foundation, which is our emotional body, right? And our emotional body in evolutionary astrology is the key to our evolutionary journey. If you think about it, it's like it doesn't really matter if we understand something intellectually or if something from an intellectual perspective makes sense and is logical. Most of the time, what we operate or how we choose to operate comes from these deeper psychological, emotional roots. And that happens whether we're aware of it or not, right? A great example, when I was a financial advisor, you know, people would understand logically the principles of the market, buy low, sell high, invest, for the long term. If you're investing with short-term money, you don't put it in long-term things that are, have a lot of risk or volatility. But still, there will be these places where people get stuck when things are more volatile and they have a long-term investment. They'll still sell when they feel the emotion of fear. And the emotion of fear isn't necessarily truth. It's just an emotion. It's a feeling. And sometimes we get, what I would say is the corresponding evidence of that fear, which is that we have that feeling and then something shows us, oh, I'm not safe, or, oh, I couldn't trust that. I felt, and we can often attribute that to um, having had a gut instinct about something um, but for the most part, a lot of what we deal with from an emotional perspective has to do with this patterning of the past. And a part of why I'm talking about this is because right now we're starting the week and we have the moon in Cancer. And the moon in Cancer today is making a square to the nodes, which, in evolutionary astrology, if you're born with a planet squaring the nodes, um, result in what they call a skip step, where the soul is trying to resolve dynamics of the past. And in a way, we are often trying to resolve through something, right? In this case, the the way evolutionary astrology looks at it is that there is a resolution node, and that is the node that the planet last conjoined with. Now, on a monthly basis, once a month, the moon is going to square the nodes, actually twice a month, technically. But so once a month, there's going to be an opening square where the moon was last in Aries, and now it's at Cancer. It's squaring the nodes. And so the last conjunction was to the Aries North Node. That makes this particular square to the nodes resolved through the North Node. And then on the second point in the month, when the moon squares the nodes, it will be after it has made a conjunction to the South Node. It'll be a last quarter square, right? So instead of an opening square, it'll be a closing square. And I'm speaking to the latter Capricorn dynamic. And then that will resolve to the South Node. And so there's an important um, place of significance each month when we meet this place where the moon is squaring the nodes. And I want to talk about this first quarter square, which is the 90-degree angle that the moon is making to the nodal axis. because we're really trying to actualize that North Node in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. The sense of courage, expansion, individuation that's coming through our thoughts and our thinking, having changed or significantly at least shifted into a new direction where we can see something different. And then the emotional body, Moon in Cancer, our sense of vulnerability and tenderness, our sense of safety and security is doing what it needs to do to resolve where that seems to be divergent from our comfort and familiarity with the sense of the present moment. And we can see this happen anytime really in our lives where something that is the status quo seems to challenge our ideas about what is, but it also seems to trigger a deeper longing for something more safety, more security, more emotional connection, whatever it is, right? Wherever we're having that feeling of our reality diverging from our desired experience. And I found this week to be really interesting just in observing the political landscape, because I'm not necessarily someone who considers myself a political person. I have a lot of unconventional ideas about the way human beings can work, and I don't necessarily see how the current systems are meant to solve any of those issues. However, I really found this movement that RFK Jr. did this week to be really indicative of the current astrological climate in a way that is, just amazing to me. For one, RFK Jr. is a Jupiter in Gemini. He has he's born natally with Jupiter in Gemini. And so that is a part of his personal, signature, right? Um, he's also born with the moon in Cancer and a very strong stellium of Capricorn planets. Now, this is someone who has been, you know, working for quite some time. He has Jupiter retrograde, and interestingly enough, is going to have a retrograde Jupiter return in this cycle of his Jupiter return. He made an announcement this week that he would be leaving his campaign or suspending his campaign in order and choosing to support Donald Trump. And, for many of the people who supported him, this would seem to be a really outrageous thing for him to do. And his speech, if you have a chance to listen to it, is incredible. The idealism and his challenges, the limits and the objectives. His speech perfectly describes Jupiter in Gemini, Mars in Gemini, square T square to Saturn in Pisces and Venus in Virgo, right? He very much articulates things about um what democracy means to him, what he is devoted to in terms of his moral obligation to help society, right? He brings forward many very Aquarian ideas, and at the same time, he has come from a very Capricorn establishment where the Democratic Party didn't even really give him a chance. And he elicits in that interview, and I'm not going to argue to the different political sides, but he elicits this crisis that he experiences in being blocked by the Democratic Party from actualizing as a party candidate. and having to make a difficult choice. One that he expresses has put strain on his marriage, has put strain on his relationships, has fundamentally undermined his campaign. And he's been doing something, which is a very Aquarian thing, to be running as an independent candidate in a country where there is a monopoly on duality, right? There are only two parties that seem to be having an opportunity for the people, right? And Aquarius has to do with the people. Capricorn has to do with the structures. So we're in this very tender moment too in our, evolutionary cycle where Pluto in Aquarius is going to dip back into Capricorn one last time for the remainder of our lifetime. And we are preparing for that final ingress into Capricorn and that final retrograde and direct transit of Pluto and Capricorn. Whereas just, when we get to November, Pluto will be entering Aquarius for the final time. And there will no longer be in our lifetime a transit of Pluto and Capricorn. Not to say that we want to be living with all of those individuals who are born with Pluto and Capricorn, who are working out that Pluto work, right? Pretty much the whole generation of children in the last 20 years are Pluto and Capricorn children. So those children, they're part of the structure of our society. And so much of what he said in his speech had to do with like really looking out for the children who are in this world really suffering and struggling with health, right? Illness, health, well-being. That's a big part of his political platform. That's a very Saturnian thing, right? And he's 70 years old. He's an older man. He's very much had to overcome quite a lot of health challenges in his lifetime. He has made this announcement and then aligned himself with Donald Trump, which to me, the Trump administration is kind of the epitome of this like Leonian ideology of individualism, right? And there is a very strong quality that he has in to compel people in particular belief systems. And we are going to see that more and more, right? With both Neptune in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, coming to an end of a cycle where they're going to be entering into the sign of Aries in the new year. And with Pluto in Aquarius, where the polarity point of Leo is going to be activated throughout the next 20 years, we are going to see strong polarizations of identity. And whether it's a political identity, a religious identity, spiritual identity, a physical identity, a personal identity, these are the structures that then make up the ego structure. So when we hold those dualities, and of course, then we have an individual who's displaying, they have what, you know, he, interestingly enough, had many of the components that would have otherwise been considered very liberal and otherwise been considered very conservative. And here we have like this is the Jupiter in Gemini duplicity, that one can be aligned with both of these ideas simultaneously. But the crisis of consciousness is being forced to make a choice to leave one and surrender to the other, right? And this is a pattern of separation in humanity, which we all deal with, right? We often think that there is a choice between being in relationship with someone, and this comes out especially when we're in romantic relationship, right? We have a choice between I'm in relationship with this person, or we have to separate and end that relationship, and so that I'm single, or so that I can be in another relationship with another person. And that split, or that crisis of consciousness, when someone's trying to decide like, should I get a divorce? Can I stay married to this person? Can often be triggered in these moments of this intensification of these squares because we are having to choose to identify with a particular thought system, a belief system, a movement, an identity, and that change in and of itself is a crisis to the ego structure, right? I remember when I got divorced, it was such an incredibly challenging and disillusioning period of time because my whole identity structure had been built around this relationship that I was in and this being my forever person. And I've come to see that that's not necessarily true, that even though the relationship ends, there is still love there, right? But the form itself changed shape, our living structures changed shape, and there was a loss of everything that was considered for me at one time to be safe and secure, even though I experienced the reality of that safety as being an illusion, right? In learning about ways that I had been deceived and where there was a whole disillusionment of my belief in this particular soulmate and this relationship that really created a crisis for me emotionally, mentally, physically for some time until I found my way into seeing myself differently or beyond that current evolutionary stage. And each time we experience these crises, each time we come face to face with a choice that we can't seem to resolve, a problem that can't seem to be solved, an issue in our lives that seems to be coming back from the past, that seems to need us to be different, there is that force, the catalyst of evolution happening underneath it, right? And all the different layers that we find our safety in get slowly peeled away in order for something new to emerge. So I just really found it quite interesting with his announcement because, and who knows what the ramifications will be on the ultimate like election day and all of that. It fascinates me to no end to look at some of these charts, both of the politicians and both, the the transits between now and October when we have eclipse season are actually quite favorable for a lot of breakthrough and really beyond from October 9th onwards towards the end of the year, we get into a phase of breakdown that is quite perplexing. Um, to me, it only indicates that whatever happens, no matter what, there will be an evolutionary breakthrough through that, but it will look like a mess. It's kind of like when you decide to move house, there is a period of time when you're packing up and when you're unpacking, when it just looks like a total mess. Neither place looks like a place that you live in or belong to. Neither place looks like something that you feel safe and comfortable in. You're just sorting through remnants of the past, things that don't work, things that you haven't had to touch in a long time, things that are difficult and awkward to move. These are parts of us, in a sense, that we might be dealing with at this time, whether we're moving physically in location or whether we're moving emotionally in the integration of what has been coming up, especially through this last month. I would say this is a pretty powerful month. And even in this last week, I've come face to face with like receiving a desire that was like really in my heart for a long time and experiencing um, a sense of shame in it not feeling the way that I had hoped for. Um, and what that does, like, I feel like we're continuously left in this perpetual desire to resolve. And these transits really emphasize that, both the square of the moon to the nodal axis, right? We're trying to resolve towards that Mars. Mars is in Gemini. Mars is championing new ways of thinking, right? And he made a decision that ultimately puts him in a track of particular thinking that he felt, I'm just referring to RFK, he felt was the only way to fulfill his moral obligation to be of service to humanity, right? This is a Virgo season. We're moving towards the Virgo new moon. We're in a balsamic phase. So, in a way, and we're just a day away from the Mercury station. And these station days, today, tomorrow, can intensify our desire to complete things, to resolve things, to bring things into a form and a structure that answers all the unanswered questions. It's like when you finally remember, like, oh, I have to get this done and this done. Um, for both my children, I'm like finishing a lot of paperwork and getting things in order. They've, my my 4-year-old has started kindergarten, and like it's really prompted me to get things together, to get things organized. I got all her school stuff organized this morning, and it's like there's this need for resolution because we're moving towards a time in this Virgo new moon where we're going to be really focusing on refining and redefining our lives based on the current information that we've received in a very humble way. Virgo is low to the ground humility. It is getting your house in order. It is getting things cleaned up. It is cleaning up your diet because you've felt like crap the last couple of weeks. It's really getting to a place in your prayer and your spiritual practice where you're just back on your knees saying, okay, creator, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know why you haven't given me a clear solution, but here I am, ready to learn, ready to listen. Here I am, ready to change from the inside. Change me, right? That's one of the most powerful prayers that we can have at this time. Change me, not change the world out there, because the world out there is going to reflect all the dysfunction and chaos that it does all the time, right? Think about what the 90-degree square is. It says the individual meaning of the new evolutionary purpose must now be given a new form to operate through in order to be fully actualized within the individual. The nature of this form would depend on those planets, right? We have the moon. This is an evolutionary form that has to do with our emotional body, that has to do with how we are working in relationship and how we are taking care of ourselves, right? We can have a crisis where it seems like everybody needs me to take care of them. I need to take care of myself, and there's not enough time in the day to do both. Everybody wants something from me, and I have nothing to give because there's no buildup of resource within my own emotional body. And where we get stuck is where we think that we have to have it all solved. We have to have the right answer, the perfect answer. We have to be good enough. We have to deserve, right? But actually, it's these different weaknesses and deficiencies in our own lives that prompt us to face the parts of ourselves that don't want to change but need to change, right? Where we have this dynamic within the Pluto paradigm of resistance or cooperation. And it's cooperation with the desire to return to source, to return to the true nature of who we are as beings of love, created by creator, created by our source, or the desire to separate from that, to resist that, right? Which is deeply entrenched in feelings of fear, aloneness, isolation, separation is a mindset that is perpetuated by our environment in many ways and or our conditioning from the past, right? If we're dealing with unresolved traumas, unresolved patterns, unresolved ways of, you know, trying to conform, let's say, with society. And there's this quote that I came across the other day, that is like acknowledging the extent to which it is not healthy to try to be normal in a sick society, right? The healthy thing in a sick society would be to question the status quo in order to find our way to healing, in order to find our way to health. And I really think that's so fascinating to me, that what RFK was standing for is like this healing and this well-being of society, and this recognition of like, it is unnatural for children to be diabetic and autistic at the levels and the rates that they are. Like, it is unnatural for our children to be so sick. It is unnatural for our society, for human beings to be so sick. And, I was seeing this shaman many years ago that said to me, it is not an individual who is sick. It's never an individual who's sick. It is a community who's sick. And that individual is a part of the community. In a way, we're saying it's not our relationships that are suffering. It isn't individual marriages that are suffering. It isn't individual people, right? The sovereign individual is not the one who's suffering. The suffering is in the collective, where individuals are given or not given the very foundational things that they need in order to thrive. And if we are moving from an evolutionary perspective, from survival to thriving, from conditions of suppression and oppression to creative actualization, where our gifts and our hearts are really leading the way in the world and creating the world that we want to see, right? Then these things have to change. Naturally, we have to become well in order to have the physical mobility and the well-being in order to do what we are called to do. Naturally, we have to create a different environment in our relationships, where we can have individual freedom and we can have trust, where we can have safety and we can have love, where we can have a sense of being who we are and being in our special and sacred purpose in the world, and being a part of something greater and larger than ourselves. So that's kind of the energy of this week, in a nutshell. Hopefully you're following all of that. We move through this Cancer moon, and then as the moon moves into the sign of Leo, it immediately hits that Pluto polarity point, opposing Pluto. We have Mercury, which stations direct at 21 degrees Leo. And we have Venus, who leaves the sign of Virgo and enters the sign of Libra. And her Libra time is about this completion of her cycle with the South Node. She is balsamic to the South Node, right? Which means that we're ending a relationship cycle. We're ending a pattern. We're ending a way that we've been really trying to reconcile for this last year, if not like the last 18 months or more. But for sure, this is coming to a closure. If you followed my work with Venus, I did a lot of work last year in my program, Love Evolution. And I'm looking at the possibility of bringing Love Evolution back this year. We went through Venus through all the houses. I'm not talking about this year, 2024, but I'm talking about 2025. And we followed Venus through all the houses. And when she's in the sign of Libra, that is a home sign for her. It is a sign of familiarity. It's about harmony and peace and balance in relationship. And a part of the shadow of that is where we have suppressed our own needs or desires, suppressed our own voice, manipulated ourselves or others in order to maintain a sense of safety or nurturance or security in relationship, but to the detriment of our own true heart's desire, to the detriment of our own needs. And that is one place where we have been doing the work, I think, in these last years to liberate from that and to create new structures within our own self, like our sense of self-value and self-worth within our own voice. Um, one of the things that I really realized in this last time is like, oh yeah, I love to sing. I love music. I love to sing, and I really want to cultivate that capacity, right? And I have this opportunity to participate in this divine voice retreat, which is being led by this beautiful singer, musician who's been in my field so much. Like I can only say that the divine is bringing us together. And so, if you're local, if you're in Northern California, if you want to join on this retreat, she's leading this divine voice retreat um the weekend in September, Labor Day weekend or whatever, the weekend after that. Not the first weekend, but the second weekend. And it's yoga and chanting and singing and learning about the harmonium and learning in a beautiful setting of nature with nourishing food. And it's like sounds totally amazing. Really, really excited for this opportunity to sing and to practice, right? And that is a part of this Venus in Libra opportunity. We have a chance, especially with Mercury direct, and as the moon is closing in the cycle, to really come back into connection with our voice, to really come back into connection with our desires, because it's in owning those desires, not letting them drive us as like unmet needs, but in owning those desires and also activating them, actualizing them, moving them into action, taking them from a place of like, oh, this is something I think about, I want, or I think I want this, or I think I, right? And Virgo is very practical. Virgo is like, well, then what do you need to do? How do you actually have to tune the instrument of your voice? How do you actually have to tune the instrument of your mind? How do you actually have to change the conditions of your life? And it's that practical aspect of Virgo that can really help us right now in the places where we haven't felt, God giving us the answer, or we haven't felt like we are resolved in things. Like it's in that detail that we can begin to see, oh, this is exactly what I'm needing to do. I need to start, practicing song every day, or I need to start reading. I need to start studying more astrology every day because I love this and it's activating something it's like my students in my Foundations of Astrology class have been so incredible in that, like, I created a basic beginner's course on astrology and they're asking super advanced questions and like really deepening into this soul content, right? And that gets me feeling really excited about mentoring and developing folks, even further. Um, I helped to lead this pathway to certification mentorship with Deva Green, for folks who want to get certified as evolutionary astrologers. And it's like we're getting to the end of the practice charts to where it's really just about honing the skills. And that is a part of what the gift of Virgo allows us to do. The humility that we don't know enough is not about being less than. It's about being open and willing to refining ourselves based on our desires so that our lives start to look like that we are this divine instrument, that we are created by our creator to create and to love and to be in relationship and to be healed and to be whole. And we have to be empowered in the mundane daily details of our life. It's like doing laundry is as much a spiritual experience as is taking care of children, as is filling up your gas tank. It's like things we discern things as being special or not special, but it's not actually the truth of reality. It's everything is unconditionally loved by our creator. And so as we start to see that and we start to see our flaws as assets, as gifts, as sacred places, like, oh, this part of me still gets angry or triggered. Well, that's a sacred place that gets to work on communication. This part of me desires to sing and to sing in harmony. Well, that's a sacred place that is overcoming the fear of being heard, being seen. This part of me, desires to build financial resources and have, stability and financial security beyond like struggling and surviving. Well, that's a part of you that's healing from the vulnerability of all that we experience as human creatures, right? In a system that doesn't really support us to thrive in the ways that we truly need as human beings. And all of that is a part of this greater whole of our lives, which is undergoing a deeper evolutionary transformation. So, it's a powerful week. This Virgo new moon, I think, is one of the more beautiful, in particular, moons of this time for really writing down and really doing an self-examination, basically, of our lives, of our relationships, going into all the details and the places where it's like, oh yeah, this is what is changing. This is what has got to change. And then deciding where do I need to practically put my attention in order to make that so. And so that I leave you with that. Students in my current classes, including my Goddesses of the Revolution class, which starts this coming Friday. You can still join that class. Everyone gets access to my new moon ceremony. It's my gift to my community of students every month. And so we'll be doing the Virgo new moon on Tuesday, September 3rd, celebrating, this beautiful time for beginning again and beginning really to deepen in our connection to what we're learning about ourselves, our lives, so that we can move forward, because that is where we're going, you know. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments if there's something that sparked your interest, your heart. If there's something that touched you, you can even just leave me an emoji. I love hearing from you. Subscribe to this channel if you're new here. Thank you for joining me. Every week I put out a new week ahead video, and I'm always love hearing from you. So thanks for being with me on this journey, and bye for now.